Mr. Birla, thanks very much for your time. Let me start by asking you, the large reason for why you held off this expected consolidation for the longest time was L&T's stake in Ultratech. Was that correct, or were there other reasons that you were holding off this consolidation for, which have now, for whatever reasons, disappeared? And if you can elaborate on why you thought this was the best time.
No, I think the most important reason was the fact that we were underway with very large expansion of 15 million tons, which actually has been the largest expansion at a point of time by any cement company in the world, other than some Chinese manufacturers. And since we've completed that large expansion, we're now at a capacity of 49 million tons. It seemed like the most appropriate time to sort of restructure. Also, I would want to say that, we're looking at India becoming a superpower, and we've actually added as much capacity in the industry in the last 10 years as we did in the 8 years before that. Right. So you're looking at much higher rates of growth going forward. And it's important, amongst other things, to have the firepower in terms of the financing capability to actually be able to fund that growth. And this gives us twice the rate of growth that we could have afforded in the earlier structure.
All right. You have expressed time and again, starting from Saturday to today, that Grasim will not be reduced to a holding company status. But in your very own press release on Saturday, that's the company press release, you've mentioned that the reason you have done this and not done a vertical demerger split was to ensure that Grasim's strategic interest continues. So, I mean, reconcile both those things, because as the market sees it, this is clearly one way of ensuring that Grasim remains the holding company. What valuations come with the holding company status is a different issue altogether. But that's the way this structure is meant to work.
Well, I think a couple of points on that. One is that it's a very large holding. It's going to be a holding which will range anywhere from between
55 to 65%.
Right, that's logically how it plays out. Yeah. So it's not a small holding. Secondly, I think analysts, investors, more and more, of course globally, also in India, are looking at consolidated numbers, especially when you have such a large subsidiary. Also, Grasim shareholders are getting a direct stake in the new cement company. We also believe that at the moment we are undervalued as compared to our peers. If you look at enterprise value per ton of cement, and that itself would substantially re-rate, which maybe with a lag would take Grasim's stock to higher levels. So if you look at the stock performance today, for example, Grasim I think is actually gone up a little bit. Having said that, management decisions can't be driven by expectations around stock prices for a week after the announcement. You clearly have to take a view on the longer term, the medium term interest of the business. And this, like I said, gives us the ability to grow twice as fast as we could have otherwise. So I think this is, it's important to have ambition, but you've got to be able to finance that ambition. And that's what this restructuring seeks to do in a major way.
But that is to create Grasim as a holding company, because if you had done a vertical demerger of sorts, then Grasim shareholders would have had more direct exposure in this cement business, which would then ultimately be merged with Ultratech, and that would have maybe served shareholder interest to some extent a little more. I don't know. These things are, it depends on, at the end of the day, how much integration you're able to pull off post the merger. But if you had done that, then yes, Grasim's stake would have been lower. So what is the strategic interest that you refer to in the press release? I mean, is it just the fact that you want to create an ownership buffer? That's the Grasim holding, and it would be very difficult for anyone to ever attack your companies in any fashion.
Well, not really. I think that we have to differentiate Grasim holding in the new cement co from promoter holding.
I'm not even saying promoter holding. I'm saying Grasim helps reinforce the promoter holding, and therefore acts, if I may use the term loosely, a poison pill of sorts, because it buffers the ownership to that extent. So
no, I think Grasim already has almost 55%.
Yes. But that would have got diluted if you had, when you would have, issued extra shares of Ultratech to holders of this new cement company. So I'm just saying it's to ensure that there's a minimum amount of shareholding between the promoters and Grasim.
Well, I think not between the promoters, because the promoter shareholding remains completely unchanged. Yeah. Nothing to do with this structure, though we are looking at increasing our holding through a creeping acquisition route. But I think the point on the strong parentage being maintained between Grasim and the new cement co, that's very important, because that's what gives us, like I said, the firepower. And well, you could call it a business holding company. It's not a financial holding company for sure. Right. It's got an operating business. I think cement is going to be too large a business for cement to be called a holding company, because here you're creating the largest company in the country in the cement sector. It's also the 10th largest in the world. So I don't think that Grasim, which will hold anywhere from 55 to 65% of this company, can be called a holding company.
Well, I get what you're saying, but what I'm still understanding or trying to understand is why did you want to maintain that parentage to such a large extent? Because Grasim would have continued to be the single largest shareholder in Ultratech even if you had done a vertical split, except that retail shareholders, would have had a larger stake, so to speak. So what is it that when you say parentage and firepower, what is it that Grasim is going to continue to provide Ultratech by having that parentage of firepower?
I think that the capital calls we would have had to make in a structure which looked at just a sort of a demerger on our shareholders would have been much, much higher for the same growth that we seek to achieve now. So in terms of shareholder value creation, if you're looking at it from a more medium point of view, I think that the same investment by a shareholder in the current structure would give him a much bigger bang for the buck than if we had done just a vertical demerger.
How would you explain that? Because they would have got a higher shareholding in a vertical demerger.
Because a higher shareholding in a company that can't grow very fast, as opposed to a smaller share in a company.
But why would Ultratech not be able to grow very fast once Samruddhi Cement is merged into it? It would still be the same, except that Grasim shareholding would be reduced to that extent.
We'll have to make many more capital calls on our shareholders.
So will Grasim will continue, in some sense, providing funding to this, to Ultratech? Come Samruddhi to some extent?
Clearly, we've said that very clearly, that Grasim will continue to provide funding to the cement business. So I think that that's the whole point around strong parentage. That's something that we've said very upfront.
Okay. The other point that now Grasim is left with the VSF business. Is there any restructuring left within the VSF space, or are you looking at retaining that business? I'm laying out all the options. Are you looking at exiting? Is there within the group any intra-group restructuring that you want to do, or will Grasim continue to retain that VSF, business?
No, Grasim is going to clearly look at growing VSF. We've announced a new project in Gujarat, which will take up our capacity by 25%. And Grasim's other focus will be to fund the growth of the cement business. There is no third business that we are going to look at. And Grasim will remain in its current shape, except that you will have a very large cement company with Grasim holding a very large part of it.
Okay. And you're not at any point in time looking to exit the VSF business while you're talking about expansion plans, clearly?
We have no plans to exit VSF. We are actually going to grow VSF. And we have no plans of any restructuring that would involve Grasim for sure.
There was a question asked you in the conference, and I'll ask you that again. There are reports that LIC is one of the key investors, is not very happy with this restructuring that's taken place in the cement business. Have you heard anything from them directly? Have you done anything to assuage their fears? Where are your conversations with LIC?
Like I said, we've spoken to all our large investors very extensively in the last 3 days. LIC also has a representation on the board.
Right.
And the board has unanimously approved in principle the scheme. Of course, final approval would happen only once they receive the valuation report from the valuers. And as we've done with our other large investors, we've spoken to LIC also on a one-to-one. We see no reason why there should be a problem on that.
Is there any way you can share any information with us on what you expect the swap ratio to be, or you would rather hold those comments till you actually have official word from your valuers?
Difficult for me to say that, but I think that it's important to have the right valuers. We have Bansi Mehta and Company who have the stature to do a valuation of this magnitude and of this sort of significance.